Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation, the only podcast that goes behind the scenes to look at the business of fish and wildlife conservation in the country. I'm John Gassett with Wildlife Management Institute and your co-host for Connecting with Conservation. I'm here with my fellow co-host, Jim Cucaruto from Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. How you doing today, Jim?
Doing all right there. You tripped yourself up. I thought maybe it's a little too early and I need a little coffee or something like that. But I am raring to go because I'm excited about this. You know, we've had a number of different guests on, and one of the things that I want to remind our listeners, if you're new or watching this or you've seen past episodes, you know that what we want to do is inform our listeners about how conservation is funded in America, all the different moving parts to it, and what even I've learned over the years of doing this, or the episodes that we've done, is that there's a lot of different moving parts to it, but there really are three main parts, and it's the manufacturers that pay an excise tax, it's the state agencies that do all that great work with the funds that come to them, and it's the end user, what we call the HATs, the 60 million active hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters. And man, my mom listens to these, so I got to thank her for instilling in me to say thank you when people do something really cool. So we want to thank our HATs for funding conservation, and we want to thank our guest because he's got a long history of working at companies that fund conservation. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our guest this week, Todd Seyfert from Ruger Marlin.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Doing good. So tell us a little bit about your background. I guess first we'll start personally and then we'll get into professionally.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, gentlemen, thanks for having me on. Conservation is certainly near and dear to my heart. So anything I can do to get the word out there, I'm happy to do so. Thank you. You know what? Listen, I grew up in central Wisconsin in a family that hunted. That's what, you aspire to be able to get your hunter education certificates that you could go with dad and your older brothers to hunting camp every year. And so from an early age, 12 years old at that point in Wisconsin, got my certificate and hunted with my family since. My dad, going back in terms of conservation, he was the hunter education person in our county. And so if you wanted to hunt as a youth in Wisconsin in Wood County, you had to go through my dad's program. So I've been around conservation really my entire life. I was lucky enough to get into the industry out of college and have been in the shooting and hunt industry really my entire career. And so exposed to a lot of different manufacturers that contribute to conservation through the excise tax. And so, again, very familiar and very proud of the manufacturers in this space. And I don't really think, to your earlier comment, enough people, not just hunters and shooters, but people in general that enjoy the outdoors, whether it's hiking or fishing or camping, I don't think they really understand the amount of money that the manufacturers in the firearms and ammunition and archery space contribute to preserving our parks and our way of life in terms of hunting and shooting and getting outdoors. So
for our listeners to put a dollar figure on that, over $1 billion a year in excise taxes are paid by manufacturers in the U.S. and importers of outdoor related products into the U.S. that goes to state fish and wildlife agencies directly on the ground for conservation. And that's packaged with the license dollars from the hunters and anglers that purchase licenses. So a lot of good stuff gets done. As Jim said, shooting ranges get built, wildlife management areas get purchased and maintained, species get stocked and managed. So certainly thank you for that. I wanted to start off with saying, it's always sort of a mystery, I think, to people outside of the business of the relative size and prominence of different companies. But Ruger's the largest firearms manufacturer in the U.S. And that means you're the largest excise taxpayer in the U.S.
Yes, we fund a lot of conservation. Yeah, if you go back kind of in history, Ruger's been kind of number one or number two, but really for the last few decades, they've been number one in terms of unit production volume. Obviously, with the Marlin acquisition and getting that back up and running, that's really helping in terms of those units out the door, which are, I look at units, I equate units to dollars for conservation, right? So the more we can produce and ship to our customers, the more conservation dollars Ruger and Marlin get to help fund. And so, that's our goal. As a business, you want to grow. We focus on growth. We focus on product innovation. But to me, it really comes back to what are we doing and what are we giving back? And I think equating those units to conservation dollars is a unique way that we look at things.
Well, I tell you what, I got a little bit sidetracked daydreaming about when you said Wisconsin. I'm thinking about grouse hunting and after grouse hunting, a lagging kugel. But, we got right into that and we forgot to say, you're currently the president and CEO of Ruger, right? And Marlin. So let's talk about your professional little history and where you are today.
Yeah, guys, if you were to say that, at the 15-year-old me hunting in, Minong, Wisconsin area with my dad and brothers and cousins and uncles, that I would someday actually be running a gun company, I would have told you were crazy. So there's a lot of days I wake up and still it's like, wow, I'm the president CEO of Ruger Firearms and Marlin. So I went to state school, Wisconsin Eau Claire. My first one in my family to go to college. Worked my way through college as a bartender. It's the only way I could do it, and moved to Minneapolis post graduation. And the funny thing is, as the story goes, met a girl, and her best friend's father was one of the owners of Birchwood Casey, which was Birchwood Laboratories, which back then was gun scrubber, True Oil, and Permablue. Through an introduction and an interview process, was lucky enough to eventually get a job there. Really, truly the second person under Mike Wenner. And he just kind of showed me the way, answering the phones, customer service, product research, packaging, doing shows, traveling, customers. And that was my introduction to the space, and I was hooked on the manufacturing side. I really loved seeing things being made, being part of things being made, developing product, figuring out how to package it, figuring out the right price, what's going to get the consumer excited about buying it. And so got hooked right off the bat. And went from there, was lucky enough to be recruited out to a company called Michaels of Oregon, Uncle Mike's, which a lot of people, our listeners, might know as the swivel and holster people. And had a great ride there for 10 years. Absolutely loved every single day of it. Again, came in the sales side, but got into marketing, product development. We did some acquisitions, bought Hoppies. That was the first one I fully worked on. For those of you that remember the boar snakes, that is a company that we bought out of Idaho, where our facility was. Met the owner at a young age. He was selling those at shows, on the weekends, and turning that into a fantastic product under the Hoppies brand. And just got to really understand more importantly there how to run a business. So our CEO took me under his wing, became a true mentor. Really explained to me what servant leadership is, and really that the people here don't work for you, Todd. You work for them. And if you think about that every single day, you'll have a different perspective than most. And so, was lucky enough to be there for 10 years. We sold that business. We were private equity owned, and that business sold to Bushnell, who a lot of your listeners are going to know who that is. So I moved to Kansas City from Portland, Oregon, and helped integrate that business. And then a few years later, we sold Bushnell, and so I opted to take my proceeds and move my family back to Minneapolis, where my wife is from. There I got into, I'd known the owners of Magnum Research. They were a customer of mine. So for those of you that know the Desert Eagle pistol or the BFR revolvers, I went there, joined them, ended up buying into that as an owner. And we grew that business for a few years and then ultimately sold that to Firearms. And literally the day that we sold it, I got a call from a friend of mine who is the business development head at ATK at the time and said, "Hey, now that you're unemployed, what are you going to do?" And we chatted, and a week later, I ended up at ATK. And so back then it was ATK, and it was truly aerospace, defense, and sporting goods. And sporting goods at that point was really just ammunition. That's all we did. And so joined the sporting goods ammunition side. Worked with them, kind of sales, and then kind of sales marketing, and then business development. We kind of transformed that business under our CEO at the time, and really for 6 years we grew that business to the point where we split it into Vista, and we spun off the aerospace and defense, and we created a new public company. And so that whole journey, I can't tell you in terms of learning everything about a business, everything about being public, everything about treating employees right. It was transformational for me as a manager, as a leader, and was lucky enough to be there during that growth. We grew that business from 350 million to 3.5 billion through acquisition, and it was absolutely a fascinating time to be part of that journey at ATK. So so kind of been around the shooting and hunting sports for a long time. Kind of post ATK, had an opportunity to go into a private equity backed company that was in the archery space. So did that for a while, and still was able to contribute to conservation through the products that we made there. And then ultimately, after in 2023, kind of stepped out of that role and was looking for, kind of what's next. Early 50s, trying to figure out what to do. Took a year off and actually left the industry for a year to a company called Dometic, which makes products for boats and RVs. So kind of tangentially part of the industry, outdoor pursuits, people that love to be outdoors, but not truly in the hunting and shooting sports. Absolutely loved what I was doing. Great people, great brand, fantastic products. And then I heard about the Ruger opportunity. And, Chris had a planned retirement. And, speaking with my wife, she was like, "Man, knowing you, this is like a dream come true. It's the only, honestly, it's the only business I would have come back to the space to run. Just the reputation of Ruger over time, what they've done with Marlin since they've purchased it. Just their view of the world in terms of slow and steady growth, long-term view, not short-term profit, what they do for conservation, all of those things with my background. I loved what I was doing at Dometic and wasn't looking. But when I got the call, I was like, man, if I don't at least try, I'll regret this forever. And lucky enough, I got a phone call on Christmas Eve and last year and was offered the job. So like I said, still most days wake up and can't believe that I'm actually running a company that, it's the job I've wanted my entire career, and here I am. So
Todd, we meet a lot of folks, and we know our community is fairly small, although we think of it as it seems large to us. But it's a pretty close knit group. But you've touched most of the bases in the outdoor conservation space. It sounds like if you'd been in the boat and fishing tackle, and probably with boats with Dometic, you had a connection there. But in the fishing tackle, you'd have touched all four bases, I think, in conservation. That's just fascinating, especially since with Ruger Marlin, probably two of the brands that most kids, when they first get started hunting, that's what they're packing around. I mean, I started with a Marlin 30-30 lever action and a Ruger 10-22. That was my, that was the things I took to the field. But interesting, you mentioned your ATK work. We had a common denominator there because Mark DeYoung was our chairman of our board for a bit for WMI, and so a little before my time, but I've heard the stories, and he really helped pull us out of the ashes when we made the transition to grants and contract type work. So, but anyway, getting back to the brand, one of the things I'm impressed with is that you're not only, the largest firearms manufacturer, but you spend a ton of effort and a ton of time on firearms safety, firearms education, those sorts of things that, while everybody should do that, it seems like Ruger goes above and beyond. So tell us a little bit about what you do with firearms safety and education.
Yeah, we try to be a partner in the industry. We try to make sure that we're leveraging, one of the things that we take seriously is when you have a high profile, when you are the largest manufacturer in terms of units, how do we give back? And so whether that's through conservation, whether that's through partnering with organizations in the industry, whether that's through raising money on some of the auctions that we do, which we can talk about here in a little bit, it's really about leveraging our brand and our audience and helping get messages across. And so, obviously, not just firearm safety, but safe storage of firearms. It's Safety Month here in the industry, and so really making sure that our customers, when they're looking to acquire a firearm, they understand kind of what quality means, what you need to be safe, how you need to be safe. But more importantly, it's after the purchase. And when you take that home, how do you store it safely? How do you ensure that whether you have kids or you have adult kids or you have visitors, those firearms are not easily accessed. And so, we want to partner and we try to partner at every level to make sure that it's the full circle, right? It's from production to manufacturing, getting it through the distribution channel that we do to the retailer, to the consumer, back home, stored safely, so that person and that person's family can continue to use that firearms in the future as safe as possible.
Ruger, I have such a storied history there, 75 plus years, but a lot of people listening, probably like me, our first firearms at Ruger 1022, right? I mean, and you made a lot of those over the years. But you got a huge, a very, very broad mix of product line, except for maybe, the shotguns going after them grouse with. But so tell us a little bit about the product line that you've got going on and maybe some innovation and partnerships that you got going on.
Absolutely. I think one of the great things that Ruger likes to talk about is, not only being the largest manufacturer, but kind of the full hitting every category. And so, we've been out of shotguns for a while, as everyone knows. We get asked, it's probably the number one question I've been asked since I've been here is, when are you going to get back into shotguns? I will tell you, it's something that we are very, I'll tease it a little bit here on your show, but it's something that we're taking very serious, and I think we'll have some happy customers here maybe by the end of the year. So, and more to come there. But I think that the brand has done a fantastic job across the platforms. So whether it's some of the revolvers, but Ruger is a bolt action company. At the end of the day, we do rimfire really, really well between the Ruger 1022 that you mentioned, Jim, and the Mark IV pistols now, which, anecdotally, it's funny, just quick aside, when I met my wife, she had never shot. And so the first firearm I ever purchased myself as an adult was a Ruger Mark II because she wanted to learn how to shoot. And so when I started here, I had the serial number research to when it was produced in Prescott, Arizona back in 1995. I bought it in Wisconsin. And so that's the first, kind of full circle. The first firearm I ever purchased as an adult was a Ruger. And here I am, some 35 years later. Running the company, so kind of crazy. But back to your question. So what Ruger's done well is really platforms. So the bolt action rifle. Think about the original American rifle, right? Fantastic platform. They evolved that a couple years ago and came out with the Gen 2. It's been an absolute massive success. They did a great job in terms of the features and the benefits. And we're not just stopping with the Gen 2. We have a complete roadmap for variants of that platform. And so I think what we are looking to do as a manufacturer going forward is really understand on a platform like a Gen 2 rifle that speaks to so many people, quality, innovation, affordability. I think that's really important right now is affordability. There's a lot going on right now globally in terms of whether it's interest rates or scares around inflation or just cost of living in general. The more we can do to ensure that our products are affordable, and so we look at affordability every single day. And so with these roadmaps, we really look at how do we expand the variants and the options that people might not have thought about Ruger for in the past, and give them an option that is the same. Quality and durability they would expect from Ruger at a price that they can afford. And so that's really important to us right now. So we have the Gen 2 platform. Obviously, we launched the RXM in December with our partner Magpole. It's been a fantastic launch for both Ruger and Magpole. A product that most manufacturers probably would never decide to put someone else's name on their pistol. We believe, given Magpole's reputation and quality, it was absolutely imperative that the two of us launched that together. If Ruger really wanted to get into that Glock-ish Gen 3 pistol platform, we had to do it in a different way. That wasn't just a copycat like most people did. And so they spent a couple of years really figuring out what that would look like. And then I think ultimately the decision back then, before I arrived, to partner with Magpole was brilliant. And so we've extended that. We're working on some more products with Magpole. We're excited about some upcoming releases the two of us will be having later this summer. And so a lot of effort going into that pistol platform. Obviously 1022s, it's our bread and butter. A lot of variants there. We launched a carbon fiber 1022 again early this year. It's been fantastic. The weight on that, when you see people shoot it for the first time and how light it is, and then you add on to it something new that we just launched at NRA Show, which is the Dead Air partnership with suppressors for 22s and 30 cals, which is our first launch. You add that suppressor from Dead Air and Ruger on that 1022, and all you do is see smiles from ear to ear. And so, part of what we do is making sure that people are enjoying the outdoors, and plinking is fun. I don't care who you are and how old you are. When you can go out and plink, whether it's cans or whatever you like to plink at, steel targets, you see that interaction. Trying to make affordable, quality products and then making it a fun interaction for the consumer is what Ruger tries to do. And so the new Carbon 1022 kit really does that in spades for the consumer. So those are some of the Ruger products. Obviously, there's a ton going on in Ruger. Marlin, again, back to what a unbelievable brand. And so, for Ruger to be able to buy that, and basically it was a complete rebuild, right? So getting it out of the old facility, they brought that down to the facility in Maiden, North Carolina. Really weren't able to use the processes that were used by kind of when Remington bought that and put it into that facility up in New York. And so really it was a rebuild, right? And so the team did a phenomenal job of really having to step back and go, okay, we don't really have the right machines. It doesn't really work. We don't have, in a lot of cases, all the drawings. And so it was kind of a rebuild, and they took their time. They did it right. And when they relaunched Marlin, it was to great fanfare. But most importantly, when the consumers got it in their hands, they were like, oh, wow. Now I understand why it took them so long to get these relaunched. This is a quality gun. And so really, really proud of the team that was here that handled the Marlin relaunch, because it's been phenomenal for us.
Well, Todd, just a little bit of a testimonial. And Jim says that since we started this podcast, I'm going to go bankrupt because I end up buying products from every guest that we host. But I did, about 6 months ago, we had an episode with Silencer Shop, the CEO from there. And so I had to go try the new Silencer Shop kiosk out, and I did at my local gun store. And while I was there, there's a Mark for 2245 Mark IV with this is a Silencer Shop special sitting in the case. I was like, what is that? And he explained it to me. It's like, I got to have that. So I picked it up immediately. I mean, it's got that Ruger quality. I've had Mark IIs for years, but I picked it up and it's like that Ruger feel to it. It feels great. Love the 45 style grip. Really love the push button breakdown on it though, because that's the only thing I ever had with the old Mark IIs. They were a bear to get apart and get back together a field strip. And this is a game changer. So, but and plus the short barrel, it's like, you don't have to carry something that's 18 inches long when you put a suppressor on it. So just great out of the park with that one.
No, thank you. The team, again, really the whole idea is, where can we find opportunities to differentiate in the market? Where can we partner with brands like you mentioned, and have the right product for that specific use case? And, again, create a little bit of a niche. We like to do things, special makeup, special runs. We partner with a lot of industry companies on special run firearms for causes. And so that flexibility really extends the Ruger brand and hopefully someday when we get caught up on Marlin, we'll be able to offer some of those mixes to the Marlin family. But right now, we're just focused on getting the backlog, cut down and trying to get caught up on the demand that we have on that fantastic product line. So.
All right. Well, I'm excited about you running Ruger and Marlin now. One, just your reputation, but two, you're a marketing guy too, right? So when I was with NSSF, I got to work under Steve Zanetti, who ran Ruger for a while, and he would tell me stories about Bill Ruger, because I was all excited. I'd say, "Hey, Steve, we just spent 2 months. We just learned this. We now know what to do." And he would just laugh and tell me stories about Bill Ruger saying, yeah, he didn't believe in marketing or research or something like that. And Steve would say, "Hey, the customers want this. I'll tell the customers what they want." But it doesn't work that way anymore, right? So, tell us a little bit about, maybe some ways to market, or the importance of communication, because we don't really we don't do a good job, and by we, hunters and really the industry, preaching outside the choir. We all can say, "Todd, you're a great guy." "Well, thanks, Jim, you're a great guy," but we got to talk outside the walls of the SHOT Show to the general population. And Rob Workmeister, great communicator. We're at ATK. You probably worked with Tim Brandt, who's on our board. So talk a little about marketing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think sometimes we can be a little insular in terms of what we think is best for the consumer, which is why you get a lot of same on the shelf, right? I think what Ruger has done well, and I hope what I continue to bring with what Rob and the team already do a fantastic job of, is really just that voice of customer. So where are we getting information? We get a lot of input from customer service. So our customer service team, we do a really good job of capturing calls, questions, issues. We track everything. We take that information, we put that back into the facilities where the firearms are produced. We continue to iterate based on that feedback. So we have multiple levels. So it starts with the consumer. We have great relationships with our retailers. And a couple years ago, Ruger started doing kind of mini summits across the country with our dealers. Really, the idea there was, okay, we're getting live consumer data from our consumers calling in or emailing in. Let's couple that with what our dealers are saying, because they're a different perspective of people coming in, what's selling, what's not, what are the issues, what are they hearing in terms of brand recognition or brand overall quality. So we've been doing that, capturing that data. Obviously, because we're one of the only pure two-step distribution companies in the space. We have incredibly close relationships with our distributors, and so we get that feedback from their teams and their staff. And then Rob and the team are doing, third-party data research where we can, aggregating all that data together, and then really understanding, okay, we know we have what we think is really cool as a manufacturer, as engineers, as salespeople, as marketing people. Let's bounce that against all that information we're receiving from all these other areas in the market, and then let's sift through that and really decide, okay, if we start to put all this together and put it through the sifter, what makes sense in terms of product innovation and roadmaps. And so it's probably a little bit different than other companies, but the scale of our production and the scale of our sales allows us a little bit more input in terms of information from various sources, and we try to leverage that into what we believe the consumers are looking for, and in a lot of cases what they might be looking for that they don't know that they're looking for. And that's where the marketing and production come together, when you launch a product that customers go, "Wow, I didn't know I need this, but now that I see it, I have to have it."
But yeah, you're doing a great job. So real quick, I want to get back to conservation again. So you're paying a huge amount of excise tax, huge amount. But on top of that, you said you support like groups like, I think, SSFS and Midway USA about target shooting. You have a background in youth participation as well?
Correct. Yeah. So, I've been on the YSSA, the Youth Shooting Sports Alliance, for, I want to say 15 years now. And really that organization is really about retention, or recruitment, and then retaining youth into the shooting sports. And so love that service on that board. But what Ruger does is we've partnered with, we have certain brands And then what we try to do is we try to have products back to, some of the products that we have. So working with gunbroker.com, we do auctions that support various, conservation efforts, youth efforts, promotional efforts in the industry. And so what we do is we go back to the Bill Ruger archives. You can imagine it's pretty substantial. And we try to take a firearm a week out of the archives. We put it on Gunbroker. They've partnered with us. We sell those, and then all those proceeds go to support various activities within the outdoor space. And so really proud of what Ruger has done, obviously, before my arrival, and we will continue to do that in terms of just supporting the industry in general. And how do we do that? And making sure that, we as one of the primary manufacturers in the space continue to drive the message home that it starts with the manufacturers. If we can support the organizations and help them get their message out, then that gets to the consumer, which ultimately then can support it as well. And so we take that kind of that notion of kind of messaging really seriously here at Ruger, and hopefully things like this podcast can continue to get that message out, and then supporting it through real action like those auctions.
Yeah. So, and it keeps going, right? Excise taxes, supporting those organizations. You supported Outdoor Stewards of Conservation a few years ago with our Fill a Bag program. And, it's a conservation focused program, cleaning up the environment. And talk about the environment, you have somebody like a full-time person on staff that works on environmental issues as well. I'd love to, we're kind of running out of time, but tell us real quick about that position. Maybe we can talk about that more some other time, but.
Yeah, I think so. You're probably referring to Brittany out in Prescott, Arizona. And so we have environmental health and safety people in each of our facilities across the country. What's unique about Brittany is she just graduated. She just received her PhD, so we're really, really excited to have her. But she's doing a ton for the outdoor, a lot of research, a lot of events connected to this. She's got a complete passion for the outdoors, and so I think she would be a great person to bring on and just give you a different view and the listener a different view of how environmental health and safety is really important in terms of supporting the outdoor and conservation for the outdoors.
All right. Well, like I said, it went quick. We probably could talk all day, especially, about more of the fun stuff on hunting and all that stuff. But, man, I guess I want to hear what your favorite thing is right now to do outside, and then after that, just tell us where we can get more information on Ruger Marlin, websites, newsletters, social media.
Absolutely. So right now, quite honestly, I'm like a kid in a candy store. So I'm trying to get out and work my way through all the different product categories and platforms on each of the firearms. And so right now, I'm traveling to all the facilities on a regular basis, and I carve out time at each facility to shoot. I love to pull the trigger. Absolutely love to pull the trigger. And so right now, just really getting familiar with all of our firearms across all of our platforms and all of our facilities. Then getting outdoors on the range will be next. So right now, there's not a lot of free time. I'm kind of drinking from a fire hose, and probably will be for a while. But that's what I'm excited about, is pulling the trigger. I love to pull the trigger. And then in terms of where to find us, listen, we've got Ruger.com is the parent website. Obviously, MarlinFirearms.com also. And then on all of our socials, it's just at Ruger Official on all the socials, and you can find all the information regarding all the brands, all the product lines, and more information on Ruger itself, and in a lot of cases how we're supporting conservation in the outdoors.
Well, Todd, thank you again for coming on. From a lifelong hunter and conservationist, it sounds like you have the same background. It's super important that these excise tax dollars that are paid by the manufacturers come to conservation to make the things happen that we all appreciate and know and love in the outdoors. Thank you for being the biggest. Keep doing the great work. Keep being innovative. You have great products, and Jim's right. I'll probably have to go buy something else from Ruger now, but I've got a lot of your lines already, so I'm not sure what else that'll be. But maybe by the end of the year, there might be something new out there I have to get. So, but once again, thanks for coming on. We certainly appreciate all that you and Ruger do for conservation in this country. To our listeners, please listen to this podcast and some others. Subscribe. That way you get notifications each time we drop a new one. And other than that, thanks for listening again, and we'll see you in the woods or on the water. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.